Hello everyone, Sandra Noah here, and today I'll be teaching you about the Giganticus Lupicus solo for both the Mesmer as well as the Guardian profession. This can either be because you like a challenge, but also because you want to support your group better when you're failing at Lupicus. First of all, we'll be going over the Mesmer. There will be a link which will lead you to the Guardian if you're not interested in this. Anyhow, first of all, gear. The Mesmer will be using a lot of Berserker gear because we want to get him down quickly, and toughness isn't really important in this fight. It doesn't matter how much you have, one error will get you downed. Anyhow, as you can see, trinkets, all Berserker, runes, I use superior runes of the Mesmer. This can be replaced by 6 ruby orbs, of course. Damage is just important. Any damage based runes, maybe the Scholar, it's all possible. As far as weapons go, we'll be using a sword in the first set as a main hand. It will be equipped with a Sigil of Energy because endurance is very important in this fight. In the secondary set, we'll be using a greatsword. In phase 1, this is very important because it provides some nice AoE for the swarms. We'll be going over that later. As a secondary weapon in the first set, I'll be using another sword. This is mainly because I like the Illusionary Riposte, and the Phantasmal Swordsman does some nice damage. However, this can be replaced by either this pistol or the Focus. The pistol is quite alright because it has the Phantasmal Duelist, however the Magic Bullet doesn't do all that much damage. The Focus is quite important in the group setting. Phantasmal Warden works well because Giganticus Lupicus doesn't move all that much. However, Temporal Curtain is the most important thing about this. It can reflect projectiles when combined with a trait, which I'll be going over later, and it will help a lot when rezzing people in phase 2 or 3. Next up is utility skills. Personally, I'll be using the Signet of Illusions. This is because distortion is important in this fight, and well, if it's on cooldown, you might want to use this instead of waiting. The mantra of concentration is also important. It grants you stability really quickly. Stability is very important in the third phase. This is why rangers have a lot of trouble with it. Feedback is important because Giganticus Lupicus uses a lot of projectiles. Mainly in phase 2 and 3, this will be very important. As an elite skill, I'll be using Time Warp. I won't be using it all that much, however, sometimes it's nice to use at the transition from phase 1 to phase 2, but it can also be important when your mantra of concentration is gone and needs recharging. It will reduce the casting speed a lot. Next up, traits. 20 domination, this is just for raw damage. Empowered illusions, 15% more damage from your illusions. Mental torment, mind wreck, you won't be using it all that much, but when you will be using it, it's important that it gives that 20% more damage, of course. Dueling, 25 in there because blade training is important, but this, the master trait, this is really vital. Personally, I'll be using Deceptive Evasion. This will help with some damage from mind wreck, but also from well, distortion. Signet of Illusions will then get the cooldown of distortion, and it will help a lot. However, if you are uncomfortable with using it, probably because if you don't have any illusions up, you'll be having a problem. You can use Blood Inscriptions. This will grant you 1 second of distortion upon activating a Signet. I recommend the Signet of Midnight, of course, because it doesn't have a casting time, so you'll have some quick access to distortion. And this F4 ability will also be there, of course. 25 in inspiration. It's nice that you get this vitality boost, but it's more important that you have the glamour mastery. As I told you before, feedback is very important, and this is why this 20% faster skill recharge can come in handy. Warden's feedback, if using a focus, of course, but it's also important when actually getting to Lupicus because the elementalists as well as the hunters will be getting down quickly. Last but definitely not least, we'll be going over consumables. I'll be using an Omnom Berry Ghost. grants you a little more life, and you won't be able to use your healing skill all the time, of course, so this is very important. Next to that, we'll be using a powerful potion of undead slaying. Lupicus counts as undead, so 10% more damage is really great, and minus 10% damage, of course, from him is very important as well. Right, that was the Mesmer. Next up, we'll be going over the Guardian setup, and after that, we'll be starting the solo. Next up is the Guardian setup. It looks like the Mesmer, but it's not entirely the same, because it can be variated a lot on. The Guardian, my Guardian at least, will be using Berserk gear as well. I like the Scholar runes because it adds that little 10% more damage above 90% health, while granting some nice crit damage as well as power. You can, however, change this for some toughness, for some vitality. The Guardian gets a little more of a bonus because the armor is already stronger. However, the kill will be slowed, and it will be a lot more boring. As far as trinkets go, just stay in the same idea. I'll be using Berserker myself. You can just change this into something like well, power, toughness and vitality, or something in that kind of idea. Well, weapons, I'll be using Jormag's Breath, a sword. This will also be equipped with a sigil of energy, of course, because endurance is so vital in this fight. Next to that, I'll be using a great sword. It's also Berserker, of course, just like the sword, and it will use another sigil of energy. As a offhand weapon, as an offhand weapon, I'll be using the Focus for the solo. It's equipped with a superior sigil of perception. However, this can obviously be changed by, for example, a sigil of accuracy. The Focus is really nice because it adds this little regeneration to yourself, even though you might not even notice it, as well as the Shield of Wrath. The Shield of Wrath has two ways of using. It can be used as a block, of course. In a sticky situation, you can block up to 3 attacks. It's quite alright. But also in phase 1 you may see me use it a lot more when not necessary. You can use it as a damage output as well. It grants, well, with this setup, perhaps around 5k damage every time it explodes. It's quite alright. Up to utility skills, we'll be using Retreat. This adds some Aegis. This will combine nicely with your traits, but I'll be going over that later. This can be replaced by, for example, Save Yourselves. It will give you that nice regeneration, some vigor, and of course some more power. However, I don't like it because it has, well, no Aegis, and it's harder to use in phase 3. Stand Your Ground, that's the second one. Combined with the trait, it has a nice cooldown, 24 seconds. It's not all that long, and it grants you 6 seconds of stability. Stability, again, is very vital in this fight. As a third utility skill, I'll be using Wall of Deflection. It's important because in phase 2 as well as phase 3, Giganticus Lupicus will be using a lot of projectiles. The reflection will really add to your damage tremendously, and it will speed up the kill a lot. Renewed Focus as an elite skill. This will recharge all of your virtues, which is important, but you'll be going over that later. The invulnerability also counts as stability. That's also very important. Next up is traits. Zeal. I have 15 in there. Well, it adds 150 power, it's obviously nice, but this one is more important. The Fiery Rod increases your damage by 10% against burning foes. That's important because of your virtue of justice. You'll be burning him a lot. Symbolic Exposure, it's quite alright. This is why we're using the Greatsword. It adds another nice symbol. If you don't like the Greatsword or do not like the sword, it's also possible to use the mace for an extra block, and this will also combine nicely because the mace also has a symbol. I have 10 in Radiance. This is mainly because of Signet Mastery. The healing skill you'll be using is the Signet of Resolve. The recharge time on this Signet will be decreased by 20%, which is quite important because you'll be using the healing skill from time to time, of course. Honor, 250 points in Vitality. It's obviously nice. However, this is also because of damage. Superior Aria is important for the shouts you'll be using, retreat or save yourselves, as well as stand your ground, because you'll be needing this stability a lot, and if you're out, you might just die. Elusive Power at 25, it's important because your endurance won't be full when running this build at least. If you're running a little more defensively, it's possible that your endurance will be full from time to time. However, it's always nice to get that nice 10% damage from Elusive Power. Empowering Might, of course, is also important. It will grant you Might for 5 seconds every time you land a critical hit. Because of the fast hitting speed you'll be having because of your the sword hits pretty quickly, as well as these symbols you'll be putting up, they'll be granting you some nice crits and you'll be getting some more might. I also have 20 in virtues. This is important because of Indomitable Courage. If running the offensive kind, you will be needing this a lot. It will grant you 3 more seconds of stability upon activating the virtue of Courage. This will also be, of course, recharged by the renewed focus. In the end, it will grant you a total of 4 skills that grant you stability. It's really nice. Unscathed Contender, it's also quite alright. Combined with Retreat, this is why I enjoy Retreat, you can get that 20% more damage. It's really tremendously useful, just to speed up the kill a lot. Of course, we'll be using consumables as well, the same as the Mesmer. Omnon Berry Ghosts are very important. You'll be critting a lot, as I said before, and this 60% chance of a lifesteal is very useful. You won't be able to use your Signet of Resolve all too often, so this little add up in healing can really come in handy in a sticky situation. The powerful potion of Undead Slaying, of course, also really handy, plus 10% damage versus Lupicus, and minus 10% damage from Lupicus, of course, because he counts as undead. Right, next up we'll be going to the Mesmer solo. I'll be adding some commentary, and after that the Guardian solo. There will be a link to get you immediately to the Guardian solo, and we'll be speeding it up, of course, because we don't have time for the entire kill. Here we're going to start with the Mesmer solo. Giganticus Lupicus has 3 phases, and we'll be going over phase 1 first. This is the first 25% of the kill. First of all, there's the attack, the grub spawn. You'll have to dodge once the video stops, which is exactly right now, and once you fail to dodge this attack, you'll spawn a grub on you. This will give him a significant power boost and will knock you down. Next up, we'll be talking about his kick. He will activate this by kind of crouching, and you'll have to dodge really quickly. He'll only use this in melee range, of course, and he'll use his left foot to kick you. If he does hit you, the fight is pretty much over. He will deal some significant damage and you'll be downed at the same time. Next up is his roar. It's pretty straightforward and there's no dodging involved, but he will spawn swarms. These swarms count as veterans and they're the most annoying for the Mesmer. Their attacks are quite slow, so the way to avoid their attacks is to just run in circles. You'll see this later up in the fight. Anyhow, standing still is not an option, and that is why getting knocked down is so terrible in this part of the fight. Now for the Mesmer specific strategy. First you see me using the sword in melee range just to get him near the wall. This will result in the swarms sometimes popping up on the wall instead of actually in the arena. This will make the fight easier because you'll have significantly less swarms to actually deal with. Then I go to long range with the greatsword. Just walk in circles like I said before and try to damage Lupicus as much as possible. Using shatters here is also useful if using deceptive evasion. When you dodge, your illusions will target the swarms. I recommend just using your mind wreck to take down some of the swarms while damaging Lupicus. At 75%, he will go into phase 2, which we'll be going over later. Once you think he's around that kind of number of HP, you should try and take down the swarms quickly. This will result in having a low amount of swarms at the transition. This is the most important thing for the Mesmer. Next we'll be going to the Guardian in phase 1. Phase 1 is a lot easier for the Guardian. However, he has to stay in melee range, which means you have to know the kick. Here we'll be showing the kick again. He will crouch and then you'll have to dodge. If you fail to dodge this attack, you can either rely on your Aegis or a block on the mace. However, if you fail to do so, you will be knocked down, get some significant damage on you, and fall prey to the swarms. These swarms are spawned by Lupicus himself. Lupicus roars, and with that roar, he spawns 0 to 4 swarms. If Lupicus is near the wall, these swarms may spawn on the wall as well. This will be positive because they won't be hitting you. Otherwise, you have to walk in circles. I suggest walking from left to right, and then using either your leap or your teleport on the sword and the great sword to get back into the fight. This will negate most of the damage these swarms do. As a third attack, Lupicus will start moving his hand towards his head, as you can see here. You'll have to dodge when his hand is exactly in front of his face. This is the grub spawn. If you fail to dodge this, you will see a sort of green aura around you. This aura will mean that in a couple of seconds, probably around 3, a grub will spawn on you. This grub will knock you down, and it will go to Lupicus. Once Lupicus eats this, he will gain a significant damage boost, as well as an armor boost. Because you're in melee range, he will actually always get this. You won't have time to kill it. The DPS on the Guardian is just not good enough. This is why it's vital to dodge this grub. On the Guardian's specific strategy, it's pretty straightforward. Just try to spam symbols, damage, use this Shield of Wrath to either block or to deal some more damage even, and just try to get him down quickly. Phase 1 is quite straightforward for the Guardian, however the Mesmer has it harder. Now we'll be going back to phase 2 to the Mesmer. After that we'll return to the Guardian for phase 2 as well. Phase 2 hasn't started yet on the Mesmer, however as you can see his HP is near 75% and I've started to kill some of these swarms. At the start of phase 2, Lupicus will spawn a grub on you. This is unavoidable. If you're lucky, Lupicus will spawn this grub on one of your illusions, so you won't get knocked down. If this is not the case, it's just simple, use your mantra of concentration to get out of knockdown. I suggest using it twice and then recharging it back up again. Right now, this is the animation of Lupicus leaving phase 1 and going into phase 2. That's his melee attack. While fighting this, you might want to watch out for that massive AoE. As you just saw, I put up a feedback bubble and keep walking around. His melee attack is pretty straightforward here, but the biggest problem here are the swarms. The swarms will still be present, however you have to watch out for Lupicus himself. This is why this is the hardest part of the entire solo, the transition. Right here you will see his AoE coming again, but I don't have feedback, so I dodge back and use Blurred Frenzy to negate any damage. It's also possible to use Illusionary Riposte to negate some more damage. You really have to watch out for the melee attack though. As you keep seeing, his melee attack is pretty straightforward. He raises his right arm into the air and then sweeps you down. If you are not able to dodge this, it's going to get pretty hard. At ranged, he uses a single target ranged attack. This isn't specifically harder to dodge, however he uses it more often. If you move from left to right constantly, it is possible to negate any damage from it. However, I think this is too risky a strategy and therefore I won't be using it. This is exactly why I advise you to stay in melee range in Phase 2. In the end, there's only two attacks to look out for, the AoE and the melee attack. The melee attack is easily dodged and the AoE can be blocked by either dodging away and using Blood Frenzy or using feedback. As you can see here, I put up the feedback bubble a little too early. However, this isn't too much of a problem. Lupicus's projectiles first hit the ground near him and then hit the ground away from him. This is why it isn't that much of a problem to sometimes panic and put the feedback bubble up early. Next up will be Phase 3. It will change at 50% health, but we'll first be going to the Guardian again for Phase 2. The Guardian's almost in Phase 2. As you can see, his health is near 75%. Right now, Lupicus is going to spawn a grub on you. This is unavoidable. It's the same idea as in Phase 1, however you cannot dodge it. That was his massive AoE. As you can see, I put up a shield of reflection to block most of the damage. When doing so, it's important to know that these projectiles will explode. If you see a red circle behind your wall, it can still be dangerous. As you just saw, I didn't have any blocks left or a shield of reflection for that AoE. So what I did was I dodged away and then tried to just stay alive. Usually it helps to just stay away from the red circles. However, this can sometimes be deceiving. When at a distance, Lupicus can use a single target projectile attack here. You have to look out for it by either blocking it or dodging it. Dodging, however, is very dangerous. It's better to walk from left to right repeatedly, and by that you can probably negate the damage. Because if you run out of dodges at long range, Lupicus may shadow step to you. This will knock you down and you'll probably use your melee attack. That'll be it. In Phase 2 at least, his melee attack is pretty simple. You'll raise his right arm into the air and then sweep you. If you fail to dodge or block this attack, he will literally throw you around the dome. This will obviously be bad, because he'll be using his single target ranged attack. Again, this is all about getting Lupicus down quickly, using the Shield of Wrath, for example, for the massive AoE, and getting into Phase 3, which is the most important one. You can also use your elite skill to negate any damage from the AoE. However, I recommend not using this near the end of Phase 2, for you'll be needing it in Phase 3. As a last note, in a group setting, Lupicus will spawn even more AoE shots. This means that the Shield of Absorption on the normal shield will be more useful than the Shield of Wrath on the focus. Next up, we'll be going back to the Mesmer for Phase 3, and after that we'll go back to the Guardian for Phase 3 as well. The Mesmer has almost started Phase 3. Here, this feedback bubble will make Giganticus Lupicus go into Phase 3. We'll use a little AoE, this isn't too much of a problem, just use Illusionary Riposte. There you see Frenzied Blast. It is a massive AoE ranged attack. Usually, this is one of the attacks we use to our advantage. Feedback can use this attack to deal some really serious damage on. Anyways, even if using feedback, it's important to reflex dodge out of it. Dodge either to the right or to the left, or when using the feedback bubble, dodge into him. That there was the bubble. This bubble is the biggest problem for most classes, because you can't get out. You can only get out with stability, which I just used. The mantra of concentration grants you quick access to stability, which is really vital up here. Something else that can get you out is distortion. Distortion can only be triggered, however, when you have illusions up. This is why it's important during this fight, especially in Phase 3, to keep illusions up at all times. Either from dodging or from your weapon skills, you should be able to keep illusions there the biggest part of the fight. You have a big advantage because Lupicus will target your illusions. This is also why you should keep them up. If at the start you chose not to use Deceptive Evasion and instead have the Signet of Midnight equipped, you will have to activate that and jump at the same time to get out of the bubble. If you are unable to dodge the bubble, it is still possible to negate most of the damage. You can do this by staying calm and using Blood Frenzy, then dodging from side to side of the bubble. Then just switch to the Greatsword, you'll have another dodge ready and can go on with the fight. He will still be using his single target ranged attack, but this shouldn't be too much of a problem. Lupicus's next attack will be a massive AoE life drain. This will hit about 5 times, so it's quite dangerous. When he uses this, it will be triggered by Lupicus raising his hand into the air. You should dodge out twice. Getting the timing right is a little more complicated than the other moves. Because your illusions will be killed when they get into the life drain, it's important to use Mind Wreck once you dodge. This will get you a little more damage output. In Phase 3, Giganticus Lupicus will still be using his single target range attack, as you can see. However, this shouldn't be too much of a problem as long as you stay at close range. Next up is his single target life drain. This life drain is triggered by Lupicus kind of reaching for you. Here, again, you should dodge twice. This is very important. However, because of your illusions, he will sometimes use this on them instead. As you can see, I do not immediately dodge the second time after having done it once. It is important to do this because otherwise the last attack will hit you. Wait approximately half a second and then dodge for the second time. The fight is about to end, however I would like to show you guys a little more about how important staying calm is. Here you can see that I did not have any dodges left. I couldn't switch my weapons either, and Lupicus used his Frenzied Blast. However, instead of panicking or doing anything rash, I noticed that I had 3 illusions up. Using F4 here is alright. As long as you don't die here, F4 isn't really a skill that you will be needing to use a lot. In Phase 3, for the Mesmer, it's just important to keep recharging your mantra whenever you need it, as well as the F4 ability. Use the Signet of Illusions whenever F4 is down. This is it for the Mesmer, and we'll be going on with the Guardian next. We are back with the Guardian, and Phase 3 is starting. For the first AoE attack, the Guardian uses his Shield of Reflection, which is quite useful. Here you saw the single target life drain. Just dodge twice, it's quite simple. It can be seen and predicted by having Lupicus kind of reach for you. You'll have to wait and keep about half a second between the 2 dodges though. Next up is the AoE life drain. That's this one, and well, it's sometimes hard to dodge out of it. You have to dodge twice at least and then switch weapon for the extra energy, but it is not smart to actually dodge 3 times. Sometimes you will get hit, it will probably hit you around 4000 damage. It shouldn't be that much of a problem though. Here you can see the bubble or necrit trap. Stand your ground is very important there because you won't be getting out if you don't have any stability. Other options, however, are of course the F3 ability, which gives you stability because of Indomitable Courage in the last straight line. Renewed Focus also counts as stability. It will allow you to get outside of the bubble. However, the problem with it is that you can't dodge while using it, at least not easily. This is why you have to stay calm and not automatically dodge every time you see the bubble coming. Still in this phase, you have to get as much damage out as possible. As you saw before, you sometimes get hit by the single target projectile, which is still present in Phase 3. Here you can see that Lupicus used a massive attack right in front of him. These are projectiles, it's called Frenzied Blast. It's not as easy to predict as the other moves, so it's a good idea to dodge out of it either to the left or to the right. This should get you out of it, however, all his projectiles are explosives, which means that you can still get hit just outside of the red line. What you will see me doing during this fight is popping up the Wall of Reflection at random times. This is because you can use the reflect damage on that Frenzied Blast attack. Once Lupicus hasn't used his Frenzied Blast for a long time, you can just use that shield of reflection and then just hope for him to use it. Stand right behind it or just dodge out anyways. If you stand too far away from it, you can still be hit. Lupicus won't be using any melee attacks. This is why standing in melee range isn't that much of a problem. The bubble he uses is restricted to melee targets, so if you're in a team, you won't be having any bubble attacks on you if using ranged. Staying calm is very important here as well. If you somehow run out of dodges, run out of stability or whatever, you can use the Shield of Wrath to negate a lot of damage. The bubble, for example, can be completely negated by using the Shield of Wrath combined with a nice Aegis. It's important to always keep your energy at the highest level possible, for some attacks require you to dodge twice instead of once. Right, the fight is almost over here as well. The main point in soloing Lupicus is keeping it up, and in every phase you have to know what to do at every attack. The slightest error can get you down, and you don't want that. Here you can see a good example of me popping up the Shield of Reflection at just the right time. The reflection damage is really major. I think it's about 50,000 in total. That's everything for this strategy. The video will be continuing, of course, but you can just see the actual version too. I hope the video has been helpful to anyone attempting to solo or anyone who wants to support their team better. I hope to see some solos from you guys in the future perhaps. If you enjoyed it, maybe tune in for some other guides or some other solos. And otherwise, have a nice day and good luck.